Sorry?
Is there any glare from the windows on the camera?
Nope. No. No, and it's recording. So we'll let Karl start off because he's got, last time we went and had him later in the day and some of it got cut off because he, what's he said right here? He got cut off because the
And
memory ran off.
do you want that document up on the computer screen, or should I not bother with that?
Well, do you have the file? I can put it up there.
I sent it to you, but
Oh,
on
did you?
email, yeah. But I don't know if you
When did you send it to me?
It might have been last week I sent it.
Was it through WhatsApp?
No, I emailed it. Engineer Win.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah, you can't get
They're not letting
Yes.
you get access to that right now, yeah.
Okay.
You'd have to send it to Win Vern or another
I
email.
can do it on the WhatsApp because I've got it on my phone. So I don't have to give it to my I mean, I've got copies of it so people can see it anyway, but it's just maybe good to have it on the screen. Find it.
Well, we were talking about the land yesterday, and so there's always seems to be a lot of interest in that. And there's none of that. There's some other land that I have that I pay property taxes on. But the property taxes was like $16 a year. It's hardly worth the trouble getting in a fight over it. But now they've raised the taxes. They've actually gone up to like $50 or $60 a year. You know, so that's like triple. And so I might pick a fight with them over that.
Karl, do you go by any other names for us? You use, I didn't know if you wanted to leave it. It's Karl.
I'll do an introduction with that. Actually.
Okay. All right.
Funny you should mention it.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe you want to be like Cher,
Uh-huh.
Cheryl, Cher. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, I have to go full screen. Zoom in.
okay, it's going to be cutting off a bunch of it here, so
Can you change
if
it?
you want me to move it to the bottom, let me know.
Can you change it to the view to zoom in so that the bar on the left is gone?
What's that?
You can get rid of the bar on the left.
Bar left.
Oh,
Yeah.
Click that X. That's better. Right there.
You should. Can you zoom in?
Yeah,
You can't see it on the screen. You should be able to see it there. There's an option to zoom. I think, depending on what your view is.
you'll be up here.
Yeah, so you can
So,
zoom in.
Right. How big? You want bigger?
Just make it bigger so people can see it. I'm going to throw this out. Not 200%. Might be a bit much. There we go. That should be good.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Okay, so we'll start there, and then
Can I
if you
use
need
the
me
scroller just to scroll down if we need to?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
just
okay,
move
good.
the button.
All right, that's all I need to do. Okay, so.
Is this on your website?
That's his document.
Oh,
I didn't have it in my files, and the reason I know that is that when I saved it in the directory that I save all the stuff that I put on those,
right.
and it wasn't there. Didn't overwrite anything,
Oh.
so it wasn't there.
Now, I know it was on, we had a specific directory but it was under the Yahoo groups originally. So
Yeah.
He didn't transfer it across then.
And Yahoo went and deleted all that stuff, you know, and so.
I know it was under my name at the NEPIS,
Yeah.
under the Yahoo groups, because I
Right.
remember going into it a few times and having a couple of, well, I sent them to you to add. So anyway, I have it on the computer, I have it on the phone, so everyone can get a copy if they need it, and they can use it as a base template. So anyway, to get started, and to Ryan's point, I'm called many names, and Tara can testify to that.
Just don't
but
call
for
me
the-
late for dinner, right?
Yeah, exactly. But for today's purposes, you can refer to me and I'll answer to Karl.
Okay.
So, just a little bit about me for those that don't know. I'm a former police officer. I did my service in the UK, in England. Medically retired before moving to Canada. Lived there for nearly 20 years, and then I now find myself on the land in New Jersey State. So the reason for my little talk is I have a sort of semi-unique viewpoint because of the fact that I was a police officer. I've been on the other side of the sovereign citizen movement, which I detest.
Right.
But anybody who really knows, you have to be one or the other, you can't be both.
Right.
And it's just a stupid name the authorities apply.
Mm-hmm.
So my perspective obviously is I've been on the other side. I have an understanding or a comprehension of what it is that the police are trying to do in every encounter that they have with a member of the public. And the reason why I put this together is really to defend your position before they even start. And the notice, which I think is probably on camera, if not, then just for now.
There you go.
So that's a notice that I put on the back of my conveyance. And the reason I do that was part of the law in England in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. But it was specifically the top section, actually. Private conveyance, not for hire or reward. Now the rest of it, not engaged in transportation or commerce, refers to the laws more in, or statutes, codes in the United States, whatever state it might be, because they're all based on federal law anyway. And transportation and commerce is what the government is tasked to regulate. So the idea behind that particular notice on any of my conveyances, and anybody who wants to use it, is to inform, notify, notice the cops in advance that you are a private conveyance, you're not a taxi cab, you're not a livery, you're not for hire, you're not earning any money on the road, you're not engaged in transportation of any goods other than private property of your own, which is a allowable process under private property laws, and you're not engaged in commerce, which is what they're there to regulate. So I've just told them right from the get-go, you don't have a jurisdiction or authority over me. And if you're going to stop me, then we're going to have words. And you're going to have to go through a particularly aggravating process to get the authority and jurisdiction. Or you're just going to be a bully and you don't give a shit about the law. In which case we've got other issues to deal with. So, the fact that I spent so many years as a cop has kind of given me an insight into how they think, the processes and procedures that they carry out on a day-to-day basis. And it's got nothing necessarily to do with the law of training, it's the law of procedure. And even lawyers, it's all about procedure. Everything they do is a process and a procedure. And you follow it, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And that's how many times the jurisdiction element is obtained, because they go through that process. Step 1. For instance, they're going to pull you over. Whether you have that there or not, they're going to decide to pull you over. They come to the window, you sitting there shaking because you just got pulled over and you've got an armed aggressor at your window. On the understanding, the chances are you're just going to get a ticket, or maybe worse, because you've got something in the car that you don't want them to know about and you'd rather didn't have in the car, and so now you're twice as worried. So they're going to come to the window, and then you have to defend your position as a sovereign. And you have to report all of the processes and procedures that they've been taught to use to gain that jurisdiction and get the elements of the crime complete. And usually they don't have to prove anything, they get you to do that because you answer questions. So the process that I have kind of developed and that it's a suggestion for people to get them to use it, or a derivative of it, is so that they can empower themselves to protect themselves from what these cops are going to be doing, and it's going to be something that most people deal with and do, because as they become sovereign, as they want to live free or more free, then they will try and live and back away from the government, back away from the regulations, back away from licenses, registrations, which really you should be doing. So at some point, somebody is going to have to travel somewhere, and if they don't have a driving license, don't want a driving license, don't want a registration of the car and so on, then they're going to have to deal with a cop on the side of the street at some point. So this particular form that I've put together is a notice, and obviously you can see that's the heading. The rest of it, there are in fact 20 pages of this. However, the first 6 pages are really all the cop needs to know and all he needs to read, because the rest are pretty much citations, court citations, references, Supreme Court law and such, and then there's other sections towards the end that describe how judges and cops and what have you, government agents, are not protected under their sovereign immunity. Because when they operate outside of their lawful office, they're now operating as a private individual, a private citizen, a private man or woman, and they're no longer protected. So again, that's another portion of this document that explains that to them. So what I'm going to do, I'll probably go through a sequence of events where I'm going to describe how I think you should operate, or variations of it, when you're approached by a cop on the street, you're pulled over. So once I do that, then I can show you the forms, because at some point within that process I'm going to be giving him that if he's not backed off. So your private conveyance, whatever it might be, some people are going to be driving around in 10, 15, 20, 30, $40,000 vehicles. I don't necessarily suggest you don't do that. I mean, if you're brave enough to do it, by all means, because we've all seen the videos. The cops come along, they have bullies, they have the mates come along, they don't give a shit about your rights, because they've been told that they are the law, and they can do what they want. And the next thing you know, your vehicle's towed, and you're not going to get it back until you can show proof of registration, insurance, and a driving license, so that it can be taken out, or at least registration so that it can be towed from the tow yard. And then you've got all the fees associated with that, so it can get expensive, and you don't really want to give up on a $40,000 vehicle car. So if you're going to do this, I think until you become cogent in dealing with it, a cheap vehicle might be, or a cheap car might be the best way to go. So anyway, I'm going to go through it. You're driving down the road, travelling down the road.
Travelling.
My apologies. You know, I mean, I've been doing
I know
this
you're
for so long.
testing us. You're just testing us.
Yeah,
I just,
But again, you do this for so long, and the language is ingrained in you,
yeah.
and it's so easy to do.
Right.
And that just proves the point that it's so easy to flip and give them jurisdiction because of a misspoken word. Now, on the street, that might not be quite that important for the simple reason the cops, many of the cops have no clue. I was never told. I mean, the stuff about the private conveyance not for hire,
Right.
that was written into the law as something that was displayed on the vehicles in the early days. There was no real explanation for that, along with other aspects of defence and mitigation that they had with laws. It was only later on when I realised, put two and two together, what that was. But I mean, I was always asking questions. Hey, you know, Sarge, what the hell is this talking about here? I'll talk to you about that later. You know, and they never did.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know.
And even the word vehicle, that's one of the...
It is. It's slightly different in England, but of course I've done a lot of research in both Canada and US, so I'm fully aware. And I'll move on to that as far as the descriptions, because they're also in this document. It breaks that down. So, travelling down the road, going wherever you want to go, the lights come on behind you, and you go, shit, what did I do? Or maybe you knew what you did. You went 10 miles over the speed limit in town somewhere. So, there's a couple of things you can do, and these are all suggestions, these are all things that are all part of the process, depending on how brave you are. So, you know, you wind the window down, and you slow down, you pull over, and wave him by. Because in your mind, you've not done anything wrong. He's switched his emergency lights on. He's going to an emergency.
Right.
So wave him by. Of course, he's not going to go by because he's trying to pull you over. But the next step would be to then hopefully pull into private property. Now, if it's a parking lot of a private business of some sort, fine. If you're on the highway, don't just, as soon as the lights come on, go off the side of the road. If you can, on the highway, you've not really much of a choice, because it's usually miles before the next off-ramp. So you're going to have to pull over somewhere, but try and pull over somewhere that's a little safe for both you and for him. Now, I know people, I've spoken to friends of mine that do this as well, and they've driven 2 miles down and pulled off the off-ramp. The new one was coming up, and they wouldn't pull over on the highway. Now, of course, at this point, the cop's getting mad and mad and mad, because you're not pulling over, like that, as soon as you switch the lights on. But you're doing it to some extent to protect him, and you can let him know that too. Hey, I pulled off the highway because it's dangerous out there. So this is one of the first steps, if you're brave enough to do it. Otherwise, pull over, pull off the road. Next step would be, I'm winding the window down even further. If I've not been doing this first, window right down. I can see him getting out of the car. So as soon as he gets out of the car, my hand's preferably on the door frame, so he knows where my hands are for a start. I'm not hidden anywhere. And then I'm shouting back to him as he's walking towards us, me, whoever. Hey, I see your emergency lights have come on. I saw the lights. I was waving you by to the emergency, and now I've pulled over. What's the problem? What's the emergency? Is there something I can help you with? So the reason you say that is it's given him notice that you know those lights are for emergency purposes. He knows that. I knew that every time we switched the lights on when I was doing it.
Right.
They're not to be used for pulling people over, but that's what they end up being used for. And he knows that. I knew that. Most people on the street don't know that. So I've just told him I know that they're for emergency purposes.
Right.
That, to some extent, puts him on the defensive, because he's not supposed to be doing this.
That's improper use. That's right.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, in Texas, that's a misdemeanor.
Yep.
Now, you don't have to tell him that, because he already knows it. They're told that you're not supposed to be using lights to pull people over. But it's an accepted practice. Everybody does it. As a cop, everybody does it. And every man, woman and young driver out there knows as soon as those lights come on, you pull over. But it's wrong. It's not right. So you're telling him, you know that. Where's the emergency? I didn't do anything wrong. And hey, I waved you by.
Right.
But you know, you didn't go by, so I stopped. What's the problem? What's the emergency?
You need help.
Yeah, do you need help?
Right.
That's the last thing you would say, because you want that to be the last thing on his mind as he's approaching, and the last thing you said. It's the sequence of the words you use. You've pointed out that it's an emergency process. You've pointed out that you've pointed out that you were asking him what the emergency was, and then you've also asked him, "Can I help? I've not done anything wrong. Can I help you?" So by this time he's probably reached the window. Now how he responds, I don't know. He may say something, he may not. I know some cops will ignore pretty much what you say, and as soon as they reach the window, license and registration. So this sequence, you have to try and force it. Hopefully he's a nice enough guy and he's going to answer the question. Hey, no, sorry, there's no emergency. All right, there's nothing you need to help with. He's being nice. If that's the case, and you've got somebody who's talking to you, okay, I can breathe a sigh of relief a little bit. At least this guy's talking. You know, he's reasonable. Like I say, the other alternative is the guy who just completely ignores you, gets to the window and says license and registration. Because it's a process to them. They don't want to interface with you in any other way. They just want the sequence, license and registration. You give it them, oh thanks, that's jurisdiction, thank you. You know why I pulled you over? I missed that stop sign back there. I was going a bit fast, I was doing 35 and it was 30. Oh, thanks, you just admitted it. So there's the next step. And then he'll go back, probably do a check on the radio or on the computer, sorry, for warrants and stuff, because they'll check the name, see if there's any outstanding warrants. And then he'll either come back with a ticket or he won't, depending on who he is and where he's on his quota for that month, and how he's feeling for that day, and how you interact with him. So part of the sequence, as soon as that cop has gotten to your window, you've shouted with the window fully open. You can leave it open if you want, but I would recommend not, because it's easy for them to try and reach in and grab things that they're not supposed to be grabbing, grab you. So bring the window up. But one of the things as an ex-officer I know that pisses me off is when I'm trying to talk to somebody, especially with tinted windows, and they've got a 2-inch gap. And I know I've seen it on the videos out there, the bad ones usually, not all of them, but a lot of the bad ones. You'll get someone who says, well, 2 inches, don't move it any lower than that. You can hear them, they can hear you. No, they can't, especially if you're on the side of a highway. You've got trucks going past and, you know, heavy loaders and whatever else at 80 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour. It's loud, it's noisy.
Right.
And two things, he's not going to be able to hear you, and two, if you've got tinted windows, such as I have on mine, many cars have now, he can't see in. He doesn't know, you know, maybe who's in the back seat. He can't see necessarily who's even in the guest seat. So he wants to gauge what is approaching. Cops get killed, you know, he has no clue. So give him some sense of security. 5-6 inches, it's plenty enough for you and him to hear each other, but not to go reaching in and start grabbing you through the window or grabbing in and grab your keys off the car when it gets to an extent where it's out of control at that point. So bring the window back up. As quickly as you possibly can, once he's either not responded to your question, the first question, statement, you would then ask him the next step. So, oh, there's no emergency. Well, did you see me commit or about to commit a breach of the peace? Now, you might put him on the back step for the second time because, one, he didn't expect the first question as you were leaning out of the window. Now he's got another question. Now, again, he's either going to answer it, no, there's no breach of the peace, or he's going to just completely ignore you again and follow his process. Depending on how this goes, depends on how you have to respond. You have to respond to the whole sequence of events, because it's going to get to a point where you know you've either got a good guy, temporarily, but you've got a good cop, potentially, he's willing to talk to you and interact and answer the questions you put to him quickly. Or you've got the other one who is a complete ass, and all he wants to do is follow the process and procedure and doesn't want any interaction with you at all. If that's the kind of person, then you might be in for a hard time. But you're going to have to go through this process anyway, and I'll tell you the reason why when we get right to the end of it. So the next step, he's said at this point, no, there's no breach of the peace. We're fine. So straight away, okay, no breach of the peace then. Well, did you see me commit or about to commit felony arrestable offence? No. I didn't see you commit anything like that. Or again, he's going to ignore you. And if he's going to ignore you, you still go on to the next one. Oh, no response, no answer to that. That's a way that you keep talking, you keep the focus, and don't give him the opportunity to start speaking. So even if he isn't going to respond to you and isn't going to reply, you're going to have to keep the upper hand by going on to the next question. Oh, no response to that either. Okay. Well, do you have a warrant, a verified warrant for my arrest in your possession? That's the next one. And I say verified because verified means that there's an affidavit with it. There's a complainant. Most warrants, they should have that actually to be, otherwise it's been mentioned previously, the capious warrants, which are not any real warrants at all, but it's equity. So you're asking that question, and hopefully there isn't, and he doesn't have one, and of course he'll say, no, I don't have anything like that. So the next question, straight away, or he ignores it, straight away, well, did you see the sign in the back of my conveyance? At this point, we're talking about this, the back window. Or side window, or all of them. Put as many out there as you want. And hopefully he'll respond, well, yeah, I did see it. Oh, you did? Oh, great. Then why am I under arrest? So that's the kind of the final question in your list of questions as he's approaching you. Now I'll tell you why we do that. The reason, firstly, as I've previously explained, you're shouting out for the emergency because you're telling him those lights are for emergency purposes. They're not for stopping people.
Right.
It's improper use, as was pointed out. So you're letting him know that.
Right.
The next part, breach of the peace. It's a common law offence. They can't really arrest you for or stop you for any other kind of common law type offences. So you're asking him the basic one. And no, there's no common law. Breach of the peace. No, there's no breach of the peace. The next one is felony arrestable offences. Did I commit an offence that you can arrest me for? No, not that either. Did you see the sign? Sorry, warrants. There's no warrants. Okay, great, there's no warrants. Did you see the sign? Yeah, I saw the sign. So, arrestable offences, none. Probable cause is the main reason for all of this. Because what he's gone through and what he's just answered the negative to is he's got no probable cause to pull you over. And he saw your notice saying that you're not engaged in any transportation or commerce or hire, you're not carrying passengers for any fare, transportation of any property for value or anything like that. That is written into the codes. And you just told him you're not engaged in the codes. So it vitiates completely everything that he would have probable cause to pull you over for. And he's just denied that he's got probable cause, which leads you to the final question. Why are you arresting me? And the reason I say that is because any involuntary detention has been upheld in courts, Supreme Courts, I forget the actual, it's in here, again, it's in here, but I forget the court cases. But any involuntary detention is classed as an arrest. And at that point, they should be giving you a Miranda warning. And in fact, at every traffic stop, even if you went through the actual process and they issued you a ticket, they're supposed to give you a Miranda warning. They never do. They never do. Now, when I served, we had to give a caution. Most of the time, it kind of fell over from the days where we had to issue summons. So you had to issue a caution from to them there and then. And then later you went back to the station and you wrote up the summons. They got a copy in the mail afterwards with a card to go to court or pay whatever the fine was.
Right.
After the fixed penalty or citations, what they started changing, they didn't even bother with warnings, Miranda warnings for the US, or cautions as it was called in the UK. So once you've established that they've got no probable cause and you just told him they've got no probable cause, you've then asked him, why am I under arrest? He's going to respond by saying, well, you're not under arrest. Because he doesn't know, maybe, or hopefully, doesn't know the differential between a detention for an investigation and an actual arrest. He's thinking, well, I haven't arrested you. I'm not arresting you, putting cuffs on, and that's an arrest to me. No, any involuntary detention, at that point it's an arrest. You're now asking him the question. And he'll say, well, you're not under arrest. Now this is again where you have to be brave. Oh, I'm not under arrest? Well, I don't want to be here, so if I'm not under arrest, thanks, have a nice day, officer, and drive off.
Right.
Travel off. Control the vehicle. Whatever.
While he's standing there, basically.
While standing there,
yeah.
off you go.
Right. Okay. Was he
Now,
gonna
as
do
I say,
that?
at that point, you've got to be pretty
Yeah.
brave. You've got to
Right.
have some cojones
Yeah.
to do that, because you don't know his response.
Right.
You really don't.
Because he could pull his.
Can you see that in
Weapon.
clause?
Technically, they won't pull the weapon on a vehicle because they don't have cause to use it.
Yeah.
That's a whole bunch of other
Right.
things. But it doesn't stop them jumping in the car and going after you again and
Yeah.
looking the lights back on and saying, "Hey, pull back over." At that point, you've got some more explaining to do. But if that's happening, and even if it doesn't, even if it gets to the point where he stops you before you get a chance to take off, then, okay, you just told me that I'm not under arrest. So if I'm not under arrest, it means I'm free to go. So I'm going.
Right.
No, you're not. Well, we're a bit of an impasse here because you told me I'm not under arrest, and obviously I am. So I'm going to tell you at this point that I'm reserving all of my rights, and I waive none of them, and I refuse to answer any questions at this point. However, I will give you this. I'll pass this around so you can read it. This is this document, and you're going to give it to him and say, I want you to read this, and quickly, because at this point we're on the clock and it's $1,000 a minute, as per the reference in this document. First 6 pages is all you really need. Read it, come back to me, and then we'll see where we go from there. So if I'm going to pass that round, the first page I'll talk about in a minute. That's a letter.
Yes.
But yeah, the rest of it's the form. I have one here. This one's not stapled. I'm not sure if it's actually in complete order. I think somebody knocked it out of order. So just have a bit of a reference there. So at this point, I've actually given the cop this document. He should, because of what I'm telling him and what I've told him at this point, go back to his car and start reading this thing.
Right.
If he's unsure of what the contents are talking about, he is then going to have to talk to his supervisor back on the radio, get some advice, and then come back to me. Now, I have seen videos where, not specifically this documentation, but other similar documentation, that has asserted their position by showing the true law, the nature of the travelling.
This,
We can get one of these right now.
didn't mean to interrupt you, but this first thing that he's got on here is this Arizona Senator stump letter?
Yep.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll be able to maybe get copies, or
Yes. No, I can send them through the WhatsApp to you.
email, or okay.
Now, what I will mention is that this is to be used basically for you guys as a template, because there is some text in here that refers to my specific circumstances, such as, this one further down. But anyway, it refers to me as being.
Where?
Um,
So when you hand it to him, you basically said,
Down at the bottom.
at this point, we're
yeah,
on the clock,
uh,
and you mentioned $1 or $1,000 per minute, basically.
Right there in purple, I'm a retired police officer. See it?
yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Right.
Okay, so that's where I'm pointing out my previous position. So I sympathise with him to some extent.
Right.
So you would have to change the verbiage a little bit to suit your circumstances if you want to use it. And I suggest you do keep something like this in the car, because if you just go back to the top again, Nelson. Sorry, Glenn. Okay, so just as we start off with this, because he's going to be reading it. So the first thing, I am unarmed. So before he's even maybe asked that question, I'm saying I'm unarmed. Now again, people, depending on the state, they may well have arms in them, so that needs changing.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, I'm a concealed carry, but non-combatant,
Right.
or combatant. And the reason you're saying that is, and you're a non-belligerent person too, you're just being a peaceable.
Right.
You just want to travel, you just want to get from A to B, you don't want no trouble. So you're explaining. So travel means of a private conveyance, personal automobile, these are all terms used within the codes, the acts, statutes, that actually refer to personal and private property, not vehicles. So again, personal property, private personal means of conveyance to get myself and guests. One of the things they might use to trip you up is, who's your passenger? Now, you have to correct that,
I don't have a passport.
because you don't have a passenger, you have a guest.
Right.
A passenger
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
is somebody who is
That's commercial.
commercial for hire or reward,
That's right.
and that word is very important, because once they may understand that, and may try and trick you up.
It's interesting to note that you go to the Acme store down here, and it says on the sign, this parking lot is for guests only.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
yes, peacefully and peaceably, we're reiterating that I'm not here to give you a hard time. I'm not going to be I just want to get from here to there, to do my daily stuff and just get on in my life. Please leave me alone.
Right.
All right? So, place to place, pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's right there from the declaration. So, my level of competency and proficiency to do said things is that I've been doing them since the age of majority. Peacefully and peaceably. So I do this on roads and highways that are literally defined in and by the state, foreign state, and federal statute codes and case law as being every way. And now, this particular definition is in some of the definitions quoted further down in the lower pages.
You want me to scroll down for that?
No, it doesn't matter, because there's loads of them, as I say. The first 6 pages are really the important ones. The next, 14 pages are really descriptions, definitions, and all the stuff.
On the age of majority, do you have a affidavit or anything on file that you're of age of emancipation or age of majority?
Well, again, if you're not the age of majority, then you wouldn't use that.
Right,
What I'm not.
but
No, I
it-
don't want them to. I'm not giving them any further evidence, or I'm not providing stuff.
Yeah.
All they have to do is look at me. This is my identification. Do I look like somebody who hasn't reached the age of majority?
But you could be considered in the courts as a.
If you're in the courts, you're
infant
considered an
decedent.
idiot.
Yeah,
If you're becoming with an attorney,
decedent,
you
yeah.
become with an attorney, yeah.
I always, when I make an affidavit at the very beginning, it says that I have no first-hand knowledge of my date of birth, but I do remember finishing high school in 1975, more than 40 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I always, that's one of the paragraphs at the very beginning of any affidavit that I have. So I'm well past the age of majority.
Now, don't forget that what we're trying to do, and this is all notification, this is notices, this is putting them on notice in advance. Because, I mean, we've all seen the videos on YouTube of how people have got it completely wrong. And those, strangely enough, seem to stay up on YouTube. The successful ones don't stay up there very long. But these ones do, for obvious reasons. Now, the reason they do that, obviously, is to put the fear of God in everybody else who's going to try and do the same thing, and they don't want to see people having success.
Right.
Now, the point is that the people who get it wrong don't have any kind of notification, or evidence to support their claim, especially on the side of the road. Which is another reason why this is also a good idea, because you're presenting this cop with notice and evidence. It's in his face. You're rebutting everything that he is presuming.
Right.
You're taking away his probable cause. You're taking away his authority to proceed. Because that's on the side of the street. I've been there. I've listened to this through the window of everybody saying all sorts of the things over the years. Now, we didn't go back to the cars many times there. A lot of times we'd stand by the side of the car, and I'd be writing the ticket right there, listening to this. Which is probably a good reason sometimes to go back to the car so you don't have to listen to it.
Right.
But I've been there, so I've written the tickets, ignored whatever it is that they've said, because they've provided absolutely no evidence. And it's I've gone through everything. I've gone through my process and procedure, and I've got my evidence.
Right.
So I'm proceeding.
Would you have been stuck if they presented this stuff to you back then? They're like, well,
It was, well, in those days there was almost none of this, really, because it was late 80s, well, mid 80s really, to the late 80s when this was my service on the street. There was almost none of it in those times.
See, I don't think it's a big deal. I'd rather get a ticket than to say, get out of the car, get arrested, take the car from you type of thing. When you didn't do anything wrong at all, you didn't go through any lights, you weren't speeding, you're not alcohol, you weren't drinking at all, you don't drink. For some other reason you were stopped, or someone told them to stop you, or whatever.
Okay, well, let me just cover that briefly.
Okay.
Cops pretty much can always come up with a reason to stop you.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got tail light out, there's reason number one. If your license plate light is out, there's reason number two. If you didn't indicate to turn at that last intersection, there's number three. If you're weaving across the line a little bit and then coming back,
Right.
there's number four. The list goes on and on and
I
on
realize
for the
that.
reasons that cops can make up or can use to pull you over. So if they want to pull you over, they'll have the reason to do so, ready. Because if you ask them, technically they're supposed to give you the reason. So yeah, that kind of covers that. They don't, most times they don't pull you over without just cause in their mind. I do know of some cops who think that they have the authority to pull you over to check documents, which they don't. They have to have an offence, probable cause. So, because they have no reasonable suspicion to expect or suspect that you don't have documentation, except maybe if you're travelling in a vehicle with no plates. that's another one they can pull you over for. Or private plates that they don't recognise.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be reason again. But at that point, you're now giving them the evidence for the documentation as to why you're travelling like this.
So, say you do get to the point where you are handing them, say for instance you took over and he came after you, you stopped again and went through this, and you're being a little bit, without, you weren't being arrested and so on, supposedly, but you're being arrested technically because, you're detained.
Any involuntary detention
Right.
is an arrest.
So when you say that, you handed that, you said something about, okay, now we're on the clock, and you said, did you say that my, what was it, your billing is, or what did
It's
you...
not billing.
Okay.
The reason I quote that,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll go to it in a minute. But,
All right.
okay, so I'll just carry on with this. So the description is every, for the roads basically,
Right.
is every way, lane, road, street, boulevard, and every way or place in the United States of America. Now, actually what I did,
Mm-hmm. I see that, yeah. Okay. So, right. Okay.
it's not the US,
Right.
it's the states,
Mm-hmm.
small u.
Yeah.
And as a matter of right to public vehicular travel, both inside and outside the limits of the incorporated cities and towns.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's inside an incorporated town or outside on a city highway or interstate highway, all amounts to the same thing. They're all public roads. We all have a right to use them. So now I'm directing the officer directly. Dear police officer and code enforcement officer, government agent, sheriff, law enforcement officer, or peace officer. That kind of delineates all of the different types that might be out there and how they're operating.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I always operated or wanted to operate as a peace officer, common law.
Right.
I was there to keep the peace,
Mm-hmm.
prevent and detect crime.
Right.
That was why I joined, what I wanted to do on a day-to-day basis. This bit, even this bit I guess, law enforcement officer, these were all the ones who were writing the tickets. They were all down to the codes and statute stuff. So that's to distinguish who's whom. So please read and comprehend fully this notice before you presume jurisdiction and attempt to engage this common law private sovereign into statutory.
Oh, here,
Yeah. Go to the focus again. So presume jurisdiction and attempt to engage this common law private sovereign into statutory law, public policy enforcement, and revenue generation.
Okay.
So now I've explained to him within the first, few paragraphs. I'm aiming this at you now. This next bit is important. So please be informed that this sovereign private traveller is not engaged in any commercial activity where motor vehicle licensing is mandatory. This sovereign private traveller is a freeborn and natural man, riding a motorbike or travelling for pleasure in an automobile. And this conveyance form of locomotion is his or her private property for private use only. This sovereign private traveller is not driving or operating a public property motor vehicle. Now, I've distinguished that because to drive and to operate are actually two different areas of codes and law.
Okay.
Driving is you're the one who's doing the physical control of the vehicle. An operator is somebody who owns a transportation company usually, and they operate a transportation vehicle. And there are different licenses for each. So again, they can trick you. Where's your driving license? I don't have a driving license. Oh, where's your operator's license? It's not the same thing. And they can talk about operating the vehicle, and that's a different licensing for somebody who owns a transportation business, and they need an operator's license for that.
Right.
So that's why there's a distinction there. So, therefore, not engaged in the activity of commerce and thereby not liable under the motor vehicle statutory law or subject to your jurisdiction. If a public official assumes jurisdiction and insists on, in his pursuit in engaging a sovereign private traveller without a viable sworn claim of liability, which would be usually an affidavit of claim, somebody who has reported, has first-hand knowledge, some kind of first-hand knowledge to a crime against you specifically. So, affidavit or a warrant. Again, there should be an affidavit attached to every warrant for an arrest. So he or she is trespassing and is therefore no longer immune to prosecution and will be held personally accountable in his or her private capacity for acting outside of his or her official capacity, and will thereby be charged with a hostile act of official aggression in an Article 3 court. Now, you make that threat, but it's pretty difficult to get to an Article 3 court.
Right.
But again, I'm showing him that there's a distinction. You know, we're not going down to the local magistrate's court where his buddy's the judge, maybe. Making the distinction.
Now, do you think when you?
Scroll up again, please.
I was going to say, and if they're going back there,
Up or down?
knowing that they don't want people
yes.
above a certain IQ to be police officers, cops, so on, they might be slow in reading, and they might be down there for 10, 15 minutes, and now you told them that they're on the clock now, so they come back 15, 20 minutes, whatever. If say they were checking their supervisor and this, that, and you've been detained arrested really for another 20 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, do you basically, and then he says, okay, you're free to go, but you've been detained, so you lost time. How do you get there? How do you know? Do you ask for a business card, number one, because they're supposed to give you one, but most of them don't?
A lot of them don't even have business cards.
Well, they're out of uniform then, right?
No.
No?
See, this is one of the things.
Yeah.
It's slightly different in the US than it was in the UK. We didn't have business cards.
Okay.
We had warrant cards.
Right.
And I still have one of my old ones.
I mean, I never got one
Well-
from home, but yeah, exactly. So,
But as long as they identify themselves when asked, so they're supposed to give you their name and their badge number.
yeah.
And if you watch, what division, what department you're working, the city or whatever, they're supposed to supply all that information. So that's fine. But in answer to your question, if you've been sat there 15, 20 minutes, he's been reading this,
Yeah.
he's been backwards and forwards with his supervisor and been checking stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then he comes back to the window with your form and says, yeah, you obviously know what you're talking about, you're well prepared, I appreciate that, just, be careful and,
Mm-hmm. So
maybe
basically
indicate
a little
next
more-
time or slow down, whatever it is,
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
have a nice day, sir.
Even if you did supposedly break the law, like pass the stop sign or was speeding, there's no jurisdiction on you.
He doesn't have the jurisdiction, no.
No.
Because those statutes only apply to, U.S. citizens and those that are licensed and have the authority of jurisdiction in a registered vehicle. But even then, the driver, I'm doing quotes, so it's easy for people to, comprehend it. It's not necessarily the fact that you're a licensed driver, it's the fact that you are operating as a private traveller. So it's the intent and the purpose at that moment in time. So there is a video out there, I haven't seen it for a long time. There's a guy, 22 years old, it's his mum's car, it's registered in his mum's name, and this guy doesn't have a driving license. He returned it. And the paperwork that he had, that he gave to the cop, explained that I'm operating, or I'm travelling in my mum's vehicle, because it was a vehicle, it was registered as a vehicle, had plates and everything. But my intent and my purpose is to travel, and I don't require a driving license for this. I've turned in my driving license, so I'm not operating under your jurisdiction. And the reason I mention it is because the vehicle was registered. They had jurisdiction to stop the car for whatever offence that might have come up. It was owned actually by the guy's mother, so there was no suspicion about being stolen property and what have you. And he affirmed his right to travel without the need for a driving license. And the cop gave him his stuff back and said, yeah, you obviously know what you're doing. Yeah, just be careful out there. I know you're a young driver. Just let your mum know that you might get stopped a bit more. You never know. But have a nice day. Now, I'll give him his due. The young lad was very respectful. He turned around to the officer, and I would do the same thing, because we're now talking about this exact same moment where the cop has returned to the car, he's giving you back the documentation, and says, yeah, everything seems to be in order. You know what you're doing. Have a nice day. I, in answer to your question, wouldn't be then submitting a complaint against him or an invoice of any kind for $1,000 a minute.
Right.
Because the guy has done his job.
So basically,
He suspected that there was something wrong.
right.
He investigated, realised that, oh shit, I don't have jurisdiction, I can't deal with this. The guy knows what he's doing. I got to let him go and, you know, have a nice day, be nice about it. At this point, I'm turning round. Although with COVID going on, I'm not sure if they'll do it. But hey, good job.
So even
Thank you very much.
Right.
Your
Right.
credit to your service.
Right, but you told them that because maybe you had an appointment you were supposed to be at and you missed it, or a doctor's.
It doesn't matter
It
because
doesn't
the
really
whole
matter.
point behind this, as we get further down,
Yeah.
is it.
You want to go down?
No. I'm just going to get to this a little bit first. But the point that I'm bringing up was where somebody was stopped, and they filed an official complaint, a civil complaint against the officer. It went to, it was in Tampa, traffic versus Tampa.
Okay.
The court found in the guy's favour, not the cops,
Right.
and they awarded him an amount of money that was approximately $63,000.
Well.
And that's why I say it equated to about $1,000 a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I quote that, and that's in this document where I mention that case and why I'm explaining to the officer that you should pay attention to this, because it's going to cost you, not necessarily the city of or the police department of, because at this point you're outside your jurisdiction, you're outside your authority, you're operating as a pirate on the side of the road in your private capacity. So I'm going to be suing you in your private capacity.
Yeah. Well, in the
So that
event,
explains that.
right? Because I've seen. I mean, it may sound strange, but something might happen to someone in the middle of the afternoon, and then a continuing travel is one way. For some reason, this person got stopped. This man or woman got stopped again somewhere, and went through a similar type of thing. So now, instead of a half an hour or 40 minutes, whatever, now they're possibly another hour, or you know what I mean?
Again, I mean, you're it's hypotheticals.
Yeah, I know.
But let's just say that
I've heard of it
even if
happen.
that was the case.
I've heard of it happen. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I've heard of people, you know, they get stopped by a cop, they go into the next jurisdiction, they get stopped by another cop,
Yeah.
you know, and they're in a different jurisdiction.
Right.
So I know it happens, and you can get pissed off from being stopped every 10 minutes, but the thing is, you're trying to assert your sovereignty. You're trying to, educating cops on the side of the road is not an easy task.
You don't really want to do it there.
You know, you don't really want to be
Yeah.
doing it there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you can, with this documentation,
Right.
then
Okay.
all power to you.
Okay.
And that's what we should be doing. And then if he says at the end of it, yeah, I understand exactly, yeah, you're in the right, and have a nice day.
But if you didn't give him the presentation, I mean, because obviously it's something he's going to go back. It's going to take him a little time to read it all, at least 5 or 10 minutes or more. Maybe calling another 5 minutes or whatever. If you had not given it to him, but you gave him everything up to the point of, can I help you, or you know, being detained or whatever, and he says no, and then if he's going to give you a ticket for whatever reason, I'd almost, like I said, the only thing I would be concerned about is get out of the
Well,
car.
no, if it's getting, yeah, I mean, this is all the steps.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is help you prevent the cop giving you a ticket.
Okay.
Also help prevent and I'll get to this as well, because there's the next stage where, depending on the type of cop,
Right.
he will either hold his hands up and say, yeah, you're good to go, everything's right, have a nice day, just be careful, blah blah,
Okay.
he's going to leave you to it.
Right.
Or you've got the dickhead. you've got the bully.
Yeah.
You've got the power-hungry, authoritarian cop.
But you can deal with that if you just have a ticket. You know what to do with that ticket. You know.
Yeah, you can deal with that later.
Yeah, exactly.
And then say, so there are ways that you have to assess the situation at every moment you're in it.
Right.
You know, if you know that you're dealing with a bully and an idiot, then you're going to have to deal with things slightly differently. And in the end, you might just have to accept the fact that he's going to give you a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I would try and deflect from that by saying, hey, I'm giving you all of the evidence that you need to show that I am not breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
I am operating well within the law. You obviously don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Right.
You're trying to impose your jurisdiction and authority on me, and I can't deal with you.
Yeah.
Call your supervisor.
Yeah. And if you were arrested or they take your car, now you're basically, okay, yeah, thanks, you made my day. Because basically you're going to go back.
Well, then this really kicks in.
That's
What
what
you
it is.
do afterwards can be harder as well. But the thing
Right.
is, everything you're doing is to assert your sovereignty, protect yourself,
Right.
and inform him that he doesn't have jurisdiction and authority like he thinks he does.
Right.
And if he believes that he does, then you don't want to talk to him.
Right.
Go back to your car, call the supervisor, and I want him down here. And just remind him, we are on the clock now.
Yeah.
Almost definitely on the clock now.
Yeah.
Because I've given you all the evidence, you've ignored it, now you're pissing me off. Now we're up to maybe 15 minutes. Now we're at $15,000.
Right.
And it's coming out of your pocket. I'm coming after your house, your car, your pension, your wife's pension, your wife's wages. I don't give a shit. I'm mad now.
You
Get
would actually-
your goddamn
Okay,
supervisor.
so you'd actually say that at that point, in other words, you would actually, because that's like...
Yeah, well, you're escalating. He's escalating, so
Okay.
you escalate.
Right, I understand.
You get to a point where he could get really mad,
Yeah,
but
Right.
they've got a certain modicum of training.
yeah.
And again, you make that assessment.
Mhm.
You don't elevate or escalate to a point where you know that the next thing he's going to do is just say, I've had enough of you, grabs the door open, and hopefully you've locked it so he can't open it, or he's trying to get to you, or just pulls his gun out and says, get out of the goddamn car.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's doing that, that's
Right.
threats.
Yeah.
That's threats with a deadly
Or he
weapon.
smashes your window on the other side or whatever, you know what I mean? It's,
Well, normally they wouldn't do that, not straight away. I mean, they know that once they commit damage, they usually have to pay for it.
Right. Ideally, you should have some kind of a canned recorder or whatever, which I don't,
Well,
if
again,
they had that, they could
I
steal
think
that, right?
I think the I should have probably said at the beginning as well. What you should do is make sure that you have a dash cam, front and rear, and even if you have something side to side too. And if you have a guest, make sure they have their cell phone. Most people have got a cell phone today. Make sure they've got a cell phone sat on both of you recording. And if you have your own cell phone, a lot of times it's on a some kind of dashboard interface, and just have it there, and then just hit the record button for video. Have as many recordings as you can going.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can also ask him. It gets to a point where you've given him the document and he's going back to the car. Oh, by the way, officer, do you have your dash cam recording here? Is this all being recorded? And if he says yes, good. I'll want a copy of that later. Maybe. And just so you know, there are a number of recordings going on here, and good luck finding all of them.
Right.
So,
I mean, what's
you
the
don't-
stop?
you
I
don't-
was going to say, what's the stop and take this, or your camera, or your phone, which is being recorded?
Private property, they can't without
Well,
warrant.
I understand they're not supposed to do that.
And
right?
you've also informed him that it's recording.
Yeah.
For evidential, you could even say it. Look, these recordings are for evidentiary purposes. So if he touches them,
Yeah.
he's interfering with evidence.
Yeah.
That's not, no, you don't do that as a cop.
Mm.
And if you've told him,
Yeah.
then it's on the recordings too. So he's no plausible deniability, he's no good faith,
Yeah.
oh sorry, it was an accident.
Right.
No, it wasn't. You were told it was recording, and it was recording for evidentiary purposes.
Yeah.
And you erased it.
Right. Okay. Very good.
If you hadn't provided any license and registration and insurance,
Mhm.
because you're sovereign, private.
Even if you have those things, you don't have to provide them.
How's he gonna write the citation and who's he gonna write it?
Well, that's part of the issue, because he may find out information from you because he'll get you to come out of the car. He may arrest you and then do an investigation.
And take your car away and tow it. That $1,000 a minute, right, is it's on the clock now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Essentially use that money to get, well, no, you have to register
No,
to get
well,
your car.
you'd have to go through the court procedure and whatever the complaint would have to be adjudicated, and getting that money, one, is difficult, and if you did get it, then it wouldn't be for months and months. So again, how you deal with it is entirely up to you. Even if you have a license and registration, it's the intent, the purpose you're using that car for at that moment in time. If it's not for hire or reward or transportation or engaged in commerce, then you're acting in the private capacity. It's like an overcoat. You use it when you need it and take it off when you don't.
That's true. That's true.
So
So
it's
if
up
you're
to you whether you have those things. If you're going completely sovereign and saying, I don't even need it because I'm never operating in transportation or commerce, and I'm not going to be a Lyft or a Uber driver, I don't need any of that stuff. This is my private property, and I'm going to use it for transportation of me, my guests, and my private belongings. That's what it's for. One of the things that is brought up with court cases going way, way back, the right to travel is enshrined in court cases, in Supreme Court decisions, and not just in this country, in almost every Commonwealth, Western country in the world. It's been enshrined there. So that's why I say I have the citations for the right to travel. The right to travel extends to travelling with whatever the conveyance of the day is. So 200 years ago it might have been a horse or a donkey. 150 years ago it might be a horse and a car. A bit more richer, you might have had a horse and a buggy or a carriage. And then we get into steam vehicles, the first engined cars in the early 1900s.
Family steamer.
They were, Model T Fords in the 30s and such. As technology advanced, that became the conveyance of the day. Now, I'm not saying that, even going back 200 years ago, if you didn't know how to ride a horse, it was stupid for you to try, because it was going to buck you off and probably kick you in the head. So, even today, the idea is that I don't want people out travelling if they're not capable of controlling the conveyance that they're in. I have no problem with people learning how to control that vehicle, that car, that conveyance at an early age. But once they've learned how to control it, they have no need for a license unless they're operating in commerce and transportation. So you can go through, get an initial provisional license, learn to drive, and then give it them back, or never get it fully, from the temporary to a full license. You've completed the requisite period for learning how to control that automobile, that conveyance. Now you can go out on the road, the public roads, and operate it. So, with that in mind, I'm going to go back to this again. So we finished there. So the sovereign private traveller honourably and passively presenting this knowledge to you in good faith is doing so in an attempt to protect you from yourself. Now that is the warning about the Traficant versus Tampa court case, where $1,000 a minute was the award. And I refer back to that as we get to it further down. So I have a great deal of respect for the public service you are committed to, and fully comprehend how difficult it is to seek out and prosecute criminals, as I am a retired peace officer. That's relevant to me, but to anybody else, you should probably take that out. Don't lie on these things, you know. Be respectful and be truthful. So, and have been where you stand. And I have many times, so I know what it's like. The only difference is that I didn't have a gun. When I did my service, there were no such things. So, this notice is presented at a traffic stop and therefore is now a mandatory part of the official record of any ensuing action and must be introduced as prima facie discovery evidence in said action. So I've given him the document that is giving him all the notice and notification and evidence that he doesn't have jurisdiction. And if he continues, then it must be, I'm going to be asking for it at court. And he's going to have to explain to the judge why, having given all that evidence to him, he decided to proceed anyway. So, and this would be, even before you got to the court, this would usually be pre-court hearings. You'd be sending stuff to the prosecutor saying, hey, I gave him notice, what's this all about? You know, just dismiss this before it even gets to court. Hopefully they will. If not, then, well, you're going to go backwards and forwards a little bit. Again, it's all about the knowledge you have to deal with something after the fact.
Right.
This is hopefully to deal with it before any of that happens, because the prime purpose is for you to continue your journey without hassle, without a fine, without a ticket, without arrest. This is what this is all about. So, it will be noted that willful suppression of evidence is a felony, which also goes along with the camera thing. It starts messing about with the video camera evidence. Any cause of action will result in a lawsuit under US Title 18, Title 28 and Title 42. So now, there are several, obviously, sections of Title 18, Title 28 and Title 42, although I mentioned that specific section there. I'm not sure why I didn't mention, because that would be 242, possibly 241, 245, and that one is 1983. Sorry?
Usually brought up to 42, 243.
No, 240, it's 245, I think. 241, 242. One's conspiracy, the other one's the actual individual act. 245 is similar, but there's something else on that, and I can't remember the actual verbiage or having a document on that. So, anyway, this notice has been submitted upon demand of a driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, or any other state-issued privilege, permit, or license. Can we go up, please? Thank you, next.
There it is.
There's only one
Up.
page one.
Yes.
Yeah, up or down? Up.
Yeah, sorry, down. All right, so one of the first things that many cops do, saying, you're an idiot, you're out of your mind. So the first thing I'm saying here is, well, I'm a sound mind. I'm not an idiot, I know what the hell I'm doing. And body, and I reserve all of my unalienable rights and liberties, and I do not waive any of my rights ever. I do not recognise you, I do not understand your offer, and I do not consent and waive all benefits, privileges, and will not contract with you. So I'm telling him right there and then. In that sentence,
Get lost.
get lost. Yeah,
Right.
thank you, Glenn. I'm not going to answer your questions.
Yeah.
You can ask, but I'm not going to answer. I've reserved my rights, and you know that my rights are supposed to be paramount because you took an oath to defend them. So now I've also told you that I'm not operating under code and statutes. I'm operating under my rights, which you're sworn to protect and uphold. So I just told him that within that sentence. So, and I'm further going, I'm not a person, a federal US citizen, a passenger, a corporation, or a taxpayer. I do not drive commercially. My private conveyance, truck, automobile, motorcycle, or bicycle are my private possessions. The fact that the conveyance, truck, or automobile I'm travelling in is not recorded on your state's register. Now, in this case, this is relevant to me too because it won't be recorded in any state's register because it's not from this country. So that, again, you might need to erase, remove from this, because it's probable that your car was previously registered and it may be recorded. So
What's the other alternative? Move to Canada, get a place there, come back here?
yeah. You could do that. So, yeah, so we're exempt from state jurisdiction because of that. So, just as you may choose to not answer my questions, and again, this brings us right to the very beginning, he might have ignored everything I asked him and just was keep on road, license and registration, sir, license and registration. He might not have answered any of my questions. And he might not want to answer any more questions. He might have answered those. So, well, just as you may choose not to answer any of my questions, I am not compelled under law to reply to you either. Go away. Officer, I cannot and will not provide you with any information that may later be used against me in a civil or criminal proceeding. This includes producing documents that may or may not be in my possession. So I'm not admitting to whether I have them or not.
I can already see you being dragged out of car.
Again,
Hasn't yet.
yeah. Depends, all depends on how you... can we scroll down a little bit? Just move this up again, please.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was trying to
Is that
explain
good?
this to my,
Yes.
I was trying to explain this to my brother, and he was like, that's impossible. You need insurance. You have to protect you and the person in the vehicle, but now they're my guests. How, I didn't know how to answer that question.
Everybody has insurance. It's called non-insured drivers insurance. So even if you think you're not insured, you actually are. Because the insurance companies take a portion of your insurance premium payment and it goes into a pot.
For underinsured motorists and uninsured motorists.
Correct.
So technically, you're right. That's a very good point. That's very interesting.
But also, if someone has a car registered, like New York or whatever, the reason the insurance company immediately, if you don't pay the premium or late, they send it to Albany, because Albany has the title, they give you a certificate of title, so technically, if you get an accident, they're the ones responsible. They don't want to be responsible, that's why they want you to pay, right? They want you to pay your premium for the car, which they really own. You don't count, it was brand new, you paid for it, you get a certificate of title if you
Yeah.
registered the car.
Yeah.
You gave it up. If you had
Yes.
an MSO, it's a different story, you can do something different. So,
Correct.
so bottom line is, that's why they want you to, or they'll say, well, we're going to send you a suspension notice, or we're going to suspend your license. Well, I'm not a
Well, you
driver.
cannot register without proof of insurance these days.
Well, in New York, that's another thing, right?
That was in Jersey.
They won't let you register the car in New York or New Jersey. Well, if you
Yeah.
don't have exactly.
Because registration, you're handing over your title to that car
Yeah,
to the state.
right.
You're then operating it. You're controlling it.
Mm-hmm.
It's yours to use.
Yeah.
And if you damage it or somebody else damages it, then the damage needs to be paid for. And that's why they say, well, get insurance, because, well, it's our car. It belongs to us.
'cause
They gave it to us.
Right.
It's part of the state and part of public property. And to make sure that it can be repaired, then you have to insure it. And if you don't, then, well, you can't register it. But if you're going to use that car as private property, you have no obligation to be insuring it.
Yeah.
Now, I used to do a radio show with a guy from the World Freeman Society up in Canada, and he used to bring this up. The question is, would you rather be using the roads and highways with everybody insured or nobody insured? Answer that question, which would you rather have?
I guess.
If it's common law, you're responsible.
Okay, so insured.
Yeah. Right.
Just answer the question.
Okay.
Would you rather be on the road travelling around and have everybody insured or nobody insured?
Well,
So I've got one insured.
Uh,
Are you going to change? Anybody?
so everyone uninsured, yeah, go with uninsured because that would raise higher level of attention.
Thank you. It's your property. If it's insured, you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You're driving around, you don't care if somebody hits you or you hit somebody else. Oh, the insurance will sort it out. I'm not
I got full
worried.
coverage. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if you have everybody out there and nobody's insured,
Yeah.
they're going to be,
They won't cut through
nobody's going to
traffic
hit
like
me
that.
because this is my baby, you know. I'm not going to have this damaged because if it's damaged, I'm either going to have to pay for it myself because I was the idiot that caused the damage, or somebody else, and I'm going to have to get the money out of them to pay for the damage to my car.
Wow.
So that
Yeah.
very quickly switches a mindset in people and a comprehension that insurance isn't a good thing, it's a bad thing. And he further mentioned when he was insured a long time ago, and I think they do it here too, he got a letter from his insurance company after several years of insured driving without any accidents.
Yeah.
And the letter was, oh, you've been a great driver, we're giving you one free accident. So he could have an accident
Yeah.
at no fault,
Yeah.
there'd be no penalty to him. And he went, what? You know, I could do whatever I want out there, have an accident with no repercussions to it. This is crazy. And that flipped a switch in his mind too.
I think there's a difference between common law, because on the common law, you're responsible no what? If you don't have the money and you say you disabled someone, well, you might have to go physically take care of that individual the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People say, I don't want, you know. Well, they think insurance, but you're right. With the insurance, there's people who do.
They become irresponsible.
Irresponsible, right?
They all responsibility. See, all of this about being sovereign is also about being
Absolutely.
self-responsible.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's
Self-governing.
about being an adult.
Self-governing, right. That's right.
Self-governing,
Yeah.
self-determination.
That's the problem, is all these brain-dead idiots want government to take responsibility,
Right.
want the freebies and
Big
the
daddy. They
handouts.
want daddy to be taken
That's
care of.
right, they
Yeah.
want to be babysat.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a big step for you to go into this realm
Mm-hmm.
because most people are just not used to it.
Right.
And it's a completely different style of thinking.
And some people don't
You know,
want
and
it.
Adam just
Right.
proved the point.
Yeah.
His initial response was, I want everybody insured, of course, because everybody takes care of everybody's vehicle because they're insured.
Mhm.
But when you think about it, everybody's an unsafe driver because they don't give a shit. The insurance will sort it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I was always told you need insurance because if you don't, then you're going to be private. They're going to take your money, like come after you. And
Well, insurance is a
You-
good
They can be
idea.
insured and they can still come after your
They
money.
still
Even
can
though
as
you're
well, but
insured.
that, you see,
And
this
what
is
I'm going
the
through
whole point.
right
It's
now.
responsibility, though.
Yeah.
Marie. It's a
Yeah.
responsibility.
Right.
If you're going to have an accident or cause an accident, you are responsible.
Mm-hmm.
So if you weren't responsible enough to prevent that from happening in the first place, then you should
sure.
recompense whoever it was you damaged.
Okay.
That's about being sovereign. That's about living
Responsibility.
Right.
responsible
What if
life.
you kill somebody? What if there was a child in the car? Like, I don't, these are all questions.
It's all what ifs. It's all what
Yeah.
ifs. But it's about responsibility and trying to. I mean, you can't live your life wrapped in cotton wool. People are going to have incidents. I won't say accidents because actually accidents in legal context in jurisdiction in Canada actually means an intentional collision.
Mm.
So what you want to say really is it was an unintentional collision, not accident. Because by saying accident, you're actually admitting that it was an intentional
Mm.
collision. So, just by the by, for that particular verbiage again, how they trick you with words. But the thing is, if you're doing the best of your ability to control and steer your car, your property, and you still end up in an unintentional collision, with somebody else or somebody else's property, then if you've damaged them and it was your fault, then it's your responsibility to make them whole again. That's what this is all about, sovereignty. It's about responsibility. People living together, being respectful of each other and their property. And if you damage it, then I'm sorry, I damaged it. What can I do to repair it, replace it, whatever? Now, when it comes to lives, you know, I mean, that's just, you can't, I've been in so many situations as a cop where I've had to deal with people who have lost loved ones. And I've been the ones telling them that their loved ones are gone. That's not a good situation to be in. To be the cause of it is something, again, completely different. So in answer to your question, I don't know how you could ever, I mean, how much money, how much value do you put on a life? I don't know. Living, being here and dying, it's all part of what we go through. It's all part of life and living here. Can you ever do something to repay the loss of that life? No. There's not enough money in the world to do that. And somebody loses somebody. So whether insurance is there or not, it's immaterial. But my big bugbear with insurance is it removes the responsibility from people. Because literally their style of thinking is, no, insurance, I pay insurance, they'll sort it out. I kill someone, no, don't matter, I got $2 million coverage, yeah, that'll be fine. That's the level of thinking. They've lost all level of responsibility. And that's scary. And that's why I'm the careful one. Mind you, I've had advanced driver training, so I'm seeing things that other people don't see way before they do. Sometimes I get complacent or auto driving. You do, but I'm still operating on a level that's way beyond most other people. And people need to do that. They need to train to that level when they're out on, in a vehicle, £1,500, £2,000, £4,000 trucks, You get hit by something like that at 50 miles an hour, you're not coming back. So, insurance is people ask the question, but technically, in the system that we have right now, there is such a thing as uninsured driver coverage. So,
most of our insurance that we pay is to cover uninsured drivers, especially in New Jersey, I know in Philadelphia too. The majority of what you pay for your private insurance for your car is to cover others that aren't insured. But yeah, you could get licensed and bonded, correct? I mean, there's other ways to obtain
you could get private bonding, private insurance.
It
In certain states, in essence, what you end up doing is you have to have the money because you have to put down $100,000. Say, well, there's my create a bond. There's my bond for insurance to cover damages.
Right.
Now, if it's loss of life and things, then you've got a different, because they're coming after you, for millions of dollars at that point. I don't know how you deal with that necessarily, but yeah, it's all there. But should you worry about it? No, not really. All you have to do is do the best that you can do and be the best that you can be while you're traveling. Everybody else, well, if they're idiots and they hit you, then it's their responsibility. You might not like it because it's your car and it's your private property. And you're uninsured, and in their eyes, they're going to go ballistic. But hey, it's your damn fault. You're paying for it anyway. So I'm going to take it, get you a quote, and you can get it fixed. That's the way it's supposed to be. And if they want to go through the insurance to do that, then that's up to them. Because again, technically, we don't need to use insurance. You hit me, I hit you. Okay. I hit you. Let's. I'll pay for it. Just get me a couple of quotes from 2 different garages, or bring it over to a garage I know, and we'll get a quote there too, and then we'll get it fixed, and I'll pay for it. Drop the foot. Insurance don't even need to know. So that's the way it's supposed to work. All right, so let me just continue.
But then you also may deal with other injury.
Well, there's injury as well. Again, when injury is involved,
That's when insurance is useful. You don't wanna hurt anybody, but
no,
at least the insurance will pay for their medical expenses
Yeah.
and stuff.
Sometimes things don't show up for many years later. A simple thing, because I had some things happen to me, and I, rear-ended a couple.
yeah.
Well,
But it's too late then anyway, because
Yeah.
insurance are not going to want to
No,
know even
no.
after.
I'm responsible for something someone else caused.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, let me see, if we go back, so as a private sovereign traveller reserving and invoking his or her unalienable rights, this sovereign traveller has constitutional protections, not constitutional rights. I hear that a lot. No such thing. You have protections given by the Constitution. The most important constitutional protection, best known as the Fifth Amendment right, which you mentioned could be changed to something else. It's known as the Fifth Amendment right, but there's something else.
Right, not to give evidence against yourself?
Yeah, yeah, but there was another phrase that wanted to use for that. So anyway, to remain
Well, there's-
silent, the Miranda warning. Miranda v. Arizona,
Right.
okay, 1966.
Sting operation.
So do not take offence or be insulted because I choose to remain silent and not be compelled to cooperate with your verbal interrogation. So at that point you're telling him in here what you hopefully may have already said is, I don't answer questions. And usually their first question is, why don't you answer questions? The first mistake is you answer that question. Because I don't answer questions. And that is an answer. And you've just you've waived your right. So if that happens, and I'm sure they'll ask it, your response would be, officer, I just told you. So, anyway, the Fifth Amendment provides that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself in a criminal prosecution, but also privileges him to not answer official questions put to him in any other proceeding, civil or criminal, formal or informal, where the answers might incriminate him in future criminal proceedings. And again, we've got reference to court cases, 1973, so it's a fairly recent one. So the privilege is not ordinarily dependent upon the nature of the proceeding in which the testimony is sought or to be used. It applies alike to civil and criminal proceedings. So these would be classed as civil, not criminal. Traffic infractions are not criminal. So they're civil. So it applies just the same as if it was, you got pulled over or you got arrested for burglary.
What if someone used their car intentionally to run down people on the street or whatever, which has happened in New York City and some other places? If someone actually using it as a deadly weapon, purposely,
Yeah, then you're into criminal offences.
That is criminal, right?
Because then you've used your vehicle as a
Right.
deadly weapon.
Yes.
So that it goes into a different.
Right.
It becomes a deadly weapon.
Yes.
It's no longer a vehicle.
Exactly.
So it changes. So wherever this might tend to subject to criminal responsibility on him who gives it, the privilege protects a mere witness as fully as it does one who is the party defendant. So even if they ask your guest, they can say the same thing. You don't have to be the focus of the investigation. So as the driver, in his view, he's asking you questions. And you say, sorry, I don't answer questions. Fifth Amendment protection. So he might say to the guest and start asking them questions. They're a witness to the situation. And they can turn around and say, sorry, I don't answer questions either. And you can't force me to answer because I'm operating under the same, I don't answer questions.
Right.
Fifth Amendment protection for both the focusing of the investigation and the witness to the investigation.
Oh, do I need to move?
No, you're right, I'm just focused on here, so good. Okay, so where the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination is involved, the court has always construed its protection to ensure that an individual is not compelled to produce evidence which later may be used against him as an accused in a criminal action. driver license, registration, insurance, proof of insurance, another ID that says who you are. You don't even have to ID yourself. See, this brings you on to another stage. So I'll bypass this a little bit because what typically will happen, we can now get into the point where the cop might still be by your window. He hasn't even gotten to the form yet. And he's already trying to escalate this traffic stop.
Yeah.
So this next stage is actually something that another former police officer from Texas, Eddie Craig, comes up with. Now, there's some things he mentions that I really don't like. He mentions the 2-inch window thing. You're just going to piss a cop off, really, when you do that. 5-6 inches, it's enough for him to see, you to see, and to hear. And let's face it, if he's talking about wafting air in and outside the car because you have windows open and you might smell something inside.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you've been smoking a spliff for the last 2 miles, you're screwed anyway, because then you're going to, well, actually it's not even illegal.
Crack the window,
in New
they'll
Jersey.
smell it.
They'll smell it anyway, but the problem is, you know, you've got bigger problems than the traffic stop. You know, because now you're into what would be in some states still classed as a criminal offence. Now he's got probable cause.
Right.
Now, if you have been smoking a spliff and he smells it and states, you know, I smell something in the car here, I think I smell marijuana. Can you step out of the car, please, sir?
A lot of
Now
times,
it's escalating.
my daughter was on a grand jury in Arizona, and she said it's amazing how many times the cop will ask him if you've been smoking marijuana, and he'll say yes. Or is that marijuana? Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
And that's fatal. You know, when you give evidence against yourself,
Yeah, you just
the
admitted
best
it.
thing to do is say, I don't.
What's marijuana?
Yeah. Anything but yes. You
Right.
know.
Or
And
you
don't
don't
give evidence against yourself.
Yeah. I mean, this would be the point. I don't answer questions.
Mhm.
I keep saying it. Because I'm gonna ask
Exactly.
them. I don't
Exactly.
answer questions.
If you say no, that's not,
Mhm.
then a lot of times that gives them an excuse to search,
Mhm.
because you're saying no, it's not. They think you're lying. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So don't answer the question. Okay, that's the real solution. Is don't answer the question. You tell them I don't have to say anything. It's none of your damn business. Whatever. Don't answer the question.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Again, you're standing your ground. But the thing is, what typically happens, and it happens a lot, because they want to escalate the traffic stop at this point. They're getting nowhere. This is where you've got the bully cop, the authoritarian cop who thinks, hey, I'm God, I've got this badge,
Right.
I got this gun, I can do what, excuse the French, but I can do what the fuck I want. Get out of the car. I smell marijuana, or I see something down there, I want to search this car. So now he's escalating it.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, you guess
Most people go, oh shit, yeah, okay. They do that because they have no answer to it.
Yeah.
Now this is what I like about Eddie Craig's portion of it. Because what he does, and I say this being dependent on the fact that you've not been smoking one for the last 2 miles, that you don't have anything in there, there really isn't anything that you've been smoking, there's no evidence that he can smell. But he makes that accusation, or it might be alcohol, I smell alcohol, step out of the car, I want to do a roadside sobriety test.
As I'm opening the door, I'm closing the window. While I'm removing key from ignition, I'm making a statement that I do not consent to any search or seizure of any of my private property. I
Right.
exit the car,
And
I
lock
shut
the
the
door.
door and lock the car.
That's right.
Put the keys, keep the keys in my hand.
Yeah, or
I'm
put,
not going
put
for
them in
my
a pocket
pocket.
somewhere. Well,
I'm
yeah,
not going for my pocket.
yeah,
I'm keeping them in my hand.
yes, for sure. You could definitely do that. But what
There
I'm
you go.
saying is that you're going to defend yourself. You're not going to get out of the car because you have no cause or reason to get out of the car. He's making an now
If you,
again.
if you have to get out of the car, that's all excellent stuff to do, for sure.
Yes, for sure, and I agree with you on that one. But what I'm saying is, this is all about preventing that from happening. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a drink of water. Okay, so you're going to have to jump in and defend yourself right away. Most people have no clue, apart from the fact that they're going to argue, oh, there's no marijuana, I don't smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
I don't drink. There's no smell in here.
And you don't want them getting into the car and planting something, right? Because people do that.
Well, they do that too.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you're going to respond immediately to his allegation. Now again, this only works if you haven't been smoking or you haven't been drinking, and you know
Well,
you
you don't
can't
smoke
smell.
or drink, and you don't have it in the car, right?
Yeah, there's no way you can smell it because
Right.
nobody's been drinking. If it's especially just you in there, and you haven't been drinking. No alcohol. He can't. He's making it up.
Right.
You know he's making it up. So how do you deal with it? This is the question. So the answer to that, and Eddie Craig does this, and I like it. It's good. His first response is, "Officer, that's a patent lie. You know that's false. Are you at this point making false allegations in an attempt to escalate this traffic stop?" Now, he's not going to answer that.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah.
But that actually, being confrontational like that can be good, because you're confronting them. You're basically standing your ground, and
You're defending your position.
That's
You're standing your ground, you're defending your position.
absolutely.
And you're telling him that is patently false. Are you making allegations in an effort to escalate this traffic stop by generating probable cause of a crime? In essence, is what you say to him. He cannot respond to that. He shouldn't respond to that. Now, you've just defended your position straight away. And the great thing about that is that he knows. He knows that he was making an allegation. And he didn't really have any evidence. And you know he didn't have any evidence because you haven't been smoking marijuana and you haven't been drinking.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, after you said that and he's refusing to answer, you then continue and you can say, "Officer, you have no probable cause. I have not been drinking, there is no smell of smoke, I believe you're making an allegation, I'm quite happy to stay exactly where I am. And at this point, I don't believe I want to speak to you anymore because I believe you're making false allegations in an effort to escalate this traffic stop and turn it into an arrest. Get your supervisor down here." Or you can go the nicer way and say, "Look, I have this documentation. I was going to give it to you before you decided you were going to make allegations, but now I'm suggesting you go and sit down and read this now."
Right.
And that's when he gets to read all of this. So this is one of the points where you've defended your position. He's made an allegation, tried to escalate it, and you've shot him down in flames.
Right.
Yeah, and you could actually come across as the good guy. I hate to see you get yourself in trouble. Maybe you ought to sit down and read this before you proceed any further or something like that. You know what I mean? I appreciate the work you guys do. We need people to keep the peace. And, you know, and so you kind of stroke his ego a little bit, you know?
And again, how you operate, how you interact with the cop depends on how he behaves. You know, and this typically would only be going on usually with the authoritarian type cop, or when there's a group of them, maybe. They've called for backup or somebody else has stopped and you've now got 3 or 4 officers there. And
Well, I was going to say you can diffuse it even with a joker like that by just trying to be, you know, just be, don't want to be very, very nice, pleasant, and, you know, give them a pop and smoke.
well, there's no point getting angry,
Right.
really, because then
'Cause then
Your
he-
whole idea is you're supposed to be the calm one, you're
Right.
supposed to be the intelligent, the adult in this whole situation.
Right,
But you're standing your ground.
yes.
You're not waiving your rights. This is my private property. This is not a motor vehicle. You have no jurisdiction. You can't tell me to get out of that car.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he might, and at that point, he might start putting his hand on his gun and saying, out of the car, sir, you know, whatever reason he's giving. If you're going to answer that, your answer realistically would be along the lines of, officer, I am getting out of this car because you are threatening me now. You're threatening my person. I believe that if I don't do what you tell me to do, my life might be in danger because I now see you've got your hand on your firearm. That in itself is a felony. It's threat with a deadly weapon. And I don't want to die. So I'm going to peaceably get out of this car. And at that point, now in my case, it's a push start one. There is no key. Key's already in my pocket. So I would get out of the car and close the door, but I can lock it from the inside first. When I close the door, it's locked.
I know.
So, however it's dealt with, you're right, you're in that same situation. You do not want him to get into that car without having the keys to get in there. You also are going to point out that because he's going to ask, can I search your car? Can I search your trunk? Hell no.
I had something like that happen to me about 8 years ago because my car was running low. Another old town car was running low, and I didn't take the throughway. I went to the back roads. Well, there were two cops, state troopers, and they followed a short distance, and I stopped. One thing led to another, and they told me.
What was the reason?
They said it was running low in the back. In other words, the airbags were running a little low.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they found a reason to pull you over.
Yes. Well, why not?
Always find a reason.
We're going to search your car. I said, you don't have permission. Exactly. Well, you sit on the front facing out, in front of the hood, while his partner's going through my trunk. And I had nothing, one thing
That's an illegal search.
Pardon me?
That's an illegal search.
Oh, yeah. And they actually confiscated my car, brought me to a back.
Oh, they arrested you?
Oh, I was arrested, yeah.
Oh, no, it's not because it's a search on arrest. So
They took my car,
we'll change
brought
that.
me to a back. I happen to have some cash. I don't carry it. It was $500, whatever. Bottom line is I got, now there, one guy looked a little like he was, in trouble type of thing, but I didn't go any further with it. He said, I don't want to see you around this parts again, da-da-da-da. I wound up getting, some guy just trying to get a shirt on, running to this building, if I basically happened with him and the other two cops, and I don't know, it was like, $300, $400, $500, whatever it was. It was $300, $400. That, I never got back, type of thing. So that's,
Yeah,
but I mean, I
you're
have.
good at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, just to cover that particular.
And I was living in nowhere. I was living in the middle of nowhere. I had nowhere. I did have a cell phone, and somehow I got to a place where the guy was felt really bad. But bottom line is,
that was an escalated traffic stop.
Yeah.
Because it started as a traffic stop,
Right.
and it escalated into an arrest.
Right.
So they had, whatever reason, they intimated some probable cause that gave them the power to arrest you. And when they arrested you, they also had the power to search.
Yeah.
Okay, search on arrest at the property where you're arrested.
Yeah.
Now, if they just get you out of the car, you're not under arrest, official arrest,
Yeah.
because we've already covered that an involuntary detention is an arrest anyway. They should be Mirandizing you from the very moment that they approach the window
I wasn't done.
and start questioning you, but they never do.
Right.
So, if they tell you to get out of the car, and then they would usually ask you, I think anyway, may I, can I search the car? Can you open the trunk so I can look inside?
Didn't do that. Yeah.
Now, if it's not an arrest, they have no power to do that. At which point you'll say, sure, when you come with a search warrant.
Yeah. The one guy said, no, we don't have. We can do whatever we want. You have no rights. I was told.
Yeah.
So-
Well, see, he's the authoritarian bully.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
hard to
Oh,
deal
yeah.
with those
Yeah,
types.
I know.
And you just have to kind of take your licks sometimes with those. And I hate them to death because those guys I work with and have put it sometimes
Well,
literally
Okay.
with those people because I did not like working with them.
Do I have any recourse at this point? If this was like 5 or 6, 7 years, whatever it was.
Not now. Even then, it would be hard because
Yeah.
he's got a partner with him. He's
Yeah.
going to back up whatever he says.
Right, but what about the monies that I was basically, it was extorted?
Did you get a receipt?
I got something at the time, I probably couldn't find it right now, or whatever.
Yeah. They should have given you a receipt, but even
Yeah.
if they did, it's
Yeah.
called civil asset forfeiture.
Mhm.
They believed that you were involved in the crime, and that was the proceeds of the crime. So they,
What crime?
well, they will have intimated that within the arrest records. It'll be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
They'll have had just cause to it,
Okay.
and then they take.
Oh, I think there was something in Utica, something which was settled, but it doesn't show any up or something like that. It was something, it was another minor thing, whatever it was. But the guy, I went back eventually, and he said, yeah, there's the judge who felt like I apologize, but I didn't know what I know now. And he looked, it was like, I just wanted to get this thing off the thing, just $100, and he felt bad. But they got monies out of me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean,
But it had-
interactions with cops.
Just give me $100 and
Well, yeah, in
Yeah.
other words, they want to always be the ones who's, you admit it or you're whatever, you plea bargained or something. I didn't plea bargain or anything. I didn't want to. But he said, at this point, I wanted to move on.
There are whole police departments that you would, in certain areas, that you would classify as being corrupt.
Well, there's a corruption,
Because
yeah.
they operate with this civil asset forfeiture thing. And
They make a lot of money.
New
off
York
of
is a
that.
police
They
state.
do.
New York
They
is a
do.
police state. But I'm telling you, because I've had, this happened. This was upstate. I had an incident downstate.
What I will say, because obviously it's been recorded, is that in the main, and it's been said out there too, I believe that the majority of the police officers do their job effectively and honourably.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the ex-servicemen, the ex-military, because the oath that they took means a lot more to them, because the guy was shoulder to shoulder with in the
Right.
trenches and, out in the battlefields.
Yes.
It means a lot to those guys. So when they come back and they become a police officer, that oath means a great deal to them. And we've seen, I think many have probably seen some of the recent videos about the COVID stuff, and say,
Yeah.
Officer Anderson's a prime example. That one went viral. The guy got sacked in the end for honouring his oath and saying, hey look, this stuff is unconstitutional, it's bullshit. If you're going to deal with members of the public, then honour your oath. Don't try and enforce, under colour of law, stuff that's illegal.
Yeah.
And I believe there's an awful lot of officers out there like that. So I'm not going to tar any, feathers and brushes and stuff and tie everybody into it.
No.
There are some.
Yeah.
I know there are because I had them in the divisions I worked on. So I know. Which is why I say, however you have an interaction with a police officer, you take every second that you're in there, bit by bit, and you change the way you interact and you deal with the situation based on that. If you have an honourable cop who's at your door and you're dealing with him from a position of knowledge, and you're obviously demonstrating that, then hopefully he's going to honour his oath to the Constitution. So proceed that way. If the guy's going to start saying, I smell alcohol, come on, out of the car, you're going to have to do a sort of field sobriety test.
Yeah.
I think you've been drinking, I think you're drunk. And you haven't.
Well, you
There's
don't
nobody
drink.
been anywhere near that car with alcohol for weeks.
Well, I was drunk
For years, yeah.
for many years.
So obviously that's your response, that's the Eddie Craig response.
Right.
Officer, that's a patent lie and you know it. There's no smell of alcohol, there's no smell of marijuana.
Right.
Are you at this point trying to allege an offence of some sort in an effort to escalate this traffic stop
Right.
by giving you probable cause?
Yeah.
And he knows then that you know, and how he deals with it at that point, again, it's the next level, it's the next step. There's always a left and a right.
Right.
He either backs down or he becomes an even bigger dick.
Yeah.
then you know you're in trouble because, you know, you've got somebody there who's a pirate by the side of the road with a gun
Right.
and trying to enforce law at the point of a gun.
Yeah, road pirates.
Road pirates, and you have to defend yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if it gets to the extent that you have to step out of the car, then you explain to him, because it's all being recorded, even if it's not, even if he ends up, you know, interfering with the evidence in your car.
He's recording.
He's
it.
recording
He's
it.
recording it. Okay.
Usually it's recorded on his too.
Mm.
So the point is that there should be evidence of it.
Right.
And you want to defend yourself, and you want to leave this scene without him having to arrest you and impound your car. So I'm just going to go back to this. Can we, can we scroll down again? So, because this is all, we know this pretty much. We're not.
How far down?
Um,
We're on the next page now.
yeah, no, keep going a little bit. Okay. So, just hang on a second. Oh no, so, yeah. All right. Are you going back up or are you going down?
Well, it's down. We're in the bottom of page 3 now.
All right, yeah, so we're at the bit that I want there, okay. So, we're just going on again. So this traveller does not willfully choose to consent to your offer. So we're going back to the document that he's hopefully reading. We're at page 3 at this point.
Okay.
Now, unless you have a warrant for this sovereign traveller's arrest, a validly sworn claim of liability, that's what a warrant, true warrant should be, or have seen this sovereign traveller commit a felony, you have no probable cause to detain him or her, as he or she has the right to free and unencumbered travel. Again, that's in the citations below for the Supreme Court and so on and so on. Now, if you are arresting this sovereign traveller without a warrant, you must immediately take him or her before a judicial officer of competent jurisdiction to demand a bill of particulars. You probably won't have a damn clue what that is. Typically what they do is they take you to the police station, the jail, for booking. What they should do is they should actually take you to a judge or even a magistrate to ascertain the legality of the arrest before you then take him to jail.
Yeah.
This is what you're asking
It's
for
Friday,
here.
8 p.m.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
another one I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Now, typically they will never do that, but the problem is you're saying it in here. I know what you're doing. I know that it's bullshit and it's wrong.
Right.
This is the process you should be doing, and I told you about it, and you didn't do it. So their good faith, acting in good faith, bull crap goes right out the window yet again. So that's what that's about. So, again, determine whether the arrest was lawful. That's what I just said, basically. Probable cause for the arrest. If it's not, you boot it out. The arrest was unlawful, get out. Alright, so at this point, it's or, if it's not probable cause and it's not a good arrest, you will be held personally liable and accountable for false arrest, kidnapping, and sued in your official capacity. And here is the reference to Treasurer in the City of Tampa, which is the court case that leads to approximately $1,000 a minute. It was the award for the guy who was arrested without probable cause, illegal arrest, kidnapping, and all that stuff. So the arrest shall not be based upon hearsay, can never be based on it, should be first-hand knowledge, unless supported by a warrant accompanied by a bona fide affidavit. So the way that works is the cop would be the hearsay from another complainant, but they've issued an affidavit under penalty of perjury to say, I had first-hand knowledge and this is what it is, and a warrant's been issued for your arrest. So that's what that would be. Said warrant and affidavit must be based upon first-hand knowledge, which is basically what we just said. So, let's see. Yeah, so that's going back to its continuation of the booking situation and your constitutional rightful demand. So all of that is part of the process that you're pointing out that they should follow and generally don't. They just take you right to jail. You have the booking office at the police station and you sit there till they release you or until you go to court. Okay, so this is one that I like to use. I've used it in a few different, it's a court case that references United States Supreme Court when it talks about the law of the land. The Supreme Court held that the individual may stand upon his or her constitutional rights. Now, I've not corrected that because this is actually a quote. It's a quote from what the court said. Constitutional rights don't exist. Let that be the by. He or she is entitled to carry on his or her business in his or her own way. His or her power to contract is unlimited. Now, we've said this before. Everything we do is contract. Everything we do is an agreement. And that's how they get us. We contract, we have an agreement, even if it's just a verbal. Get out of the car, sure, that's the contract. Okay, so that, unlimited. We can do that as many times as we want, for as long as we want, whenever we want. He or she owes no duty to the state or his or her neighbours to divulge his or her business. It's none of your business. You can ask me, but it's none of your business. Go away. Or to open his or her doors to investigation. I want to search the trunk. No, you don't have the power. Come back with a warrant after you've provided probable cause to the judge that you're able to go and search my trunk. Same thing. There's a document. I want to see the document. No, it's my private business. Nothing to do with you. Go away. So far as it may tend to incriminate him or her. So again, you're using the Fifth Amendment right protections against self-incrimination. You don't give him, if he asks for a license, asks for registration, you give it to him, you've just provided him the evidence that you've got a driving license and you're not obeying the contract, that the car is registered and you're not following the rules of the registered owner. Now, he or she owes no duty to the state since he or she receives nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his or her life and property. We get nothing from the state.
No.
We give to the state and they give back.
Aggravation.
Usually, yes. The only real thing that they have is protection of life and property. That's a given that they should provide, and they're not even doing that.
Right.
So again, thank you for your valuable time and consideration in this instant matter. I value your assistance and respect your obligations. So that is the first few pages. And this is a notice, and that's one of the old ones, notice to principal, there's notice to agent, agent to principal. So I'm actually doing this in bullet form as a summary to what I've said previously.
Right.
Okay, so I hereby invoke and refuse to waive all unalienable rights protected by the United States Constitution and the Constitution of any state or territory in which any incident of law enforcement against me may occur. So it doesn't matter what state, wherever I am, I'm invoking it. I hereby invoke and refuse to waive my right to remain silent and not to be a witness against myself by speech or by action as protected by the Fifth Amendment. I hereby invoke and refuse to waive my right to have assistance of counsel. Now that's not an attorney, that's not a lawyer.
Right.
Counsel can be anyone of your choice.
Exactly.
Do not ask me questions without my counsel present, as protected by the Sixth Amendment. So he can't ask you. You've now told him, well, I want my counsel. And they know that they can't, at that point, ask any further questions without counsel being present.
Mm-hmm.
So not only have you protected your rights, invoked your Fifth Amendment protections for self-incrimination, you also want your counsel present, so you can't ask me anything else. So I hereby invoke and refuse to waive my right to be free of unwarranted, non-court ordered search and seizure. So you're now also telling him, you don't have a warrant, I'm not giving you permission to search this car. It's my property, my private property, unless you come here with a warrant.
So that's counsel, but that counsel cannot then follow you and represent you in a court of law, assuming not being
That's right, because you have to be an
a bar
attorney.
member,
Right.
a license to practice law in.
You can still have a friend of the court, or a representative. The courts don't like it, but potentially, if you go in, if you're not, so you don't want to represent yourself. You are yourself. And if you're going to go to court, you have to appear in court. And the last thing you want to do is represent yourself. You could have a friend appear with you.
Who's not-
So-
As I
Almost
say,
like
the
it's
courts
like a-
don't like it.
Like say a deaf mute. I mean, because I've come across, there's not a lot.
Well, that's an interpreter, and
Yeah.
then they will only allow what they call not so much licensed but approved interpreters,
Mhm.
because they have them on their staff, so that they know that what this has been done in the court
Yeah.
is being translated correctly.
Mhm.
So that's why they only like approved translators in that regard.
Yeah.
And does your friend need to be, oh, not a lawyer, right? It just can be
Counsel
someone-
does not need to be a lawyer.
Right, okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. And that it does say counsel. It doesn't say attorney. It doesn't say lawyer.
Right.
On the Sixth Amendment, it says counsel. So, search and seizure. So, unless you've got a warrant, go away. You're not searching my property. Anything that comes up has to be probable cause. So they have to have probable cause to search. Now, they can generate probable cause on scene. So if they see something or smell something, that's the generating the probable cause, and that's when I spoke to you about them initiating or escalating the traffic stop to now become a criminal investigation.
Well, there's two guys there, and one somehow, you're there alone. Their partner can take something, if you have an open window on the other side, whatever, can throw something in there, and then walk around. You might not even.
Yeah, there's many things you can do. I mean,
Right.
you should be making sure that all the other windows,
Yeah.
especially if there's two of them.
Mhm.
If there's just one, he's going to be stood next to him, so you know what he's doing. But,
Yeah.
And you could have the windows down slightly, and he may even ask, if you've got tinted windows, he can't see inside because it's bright and sunny.
Right.
He may ask you, hey, can you just lower that back window a little bit? I want
Yeah.
to see who's in the back.
Yeah.
Well, there is nobody there. Well, I want to see because I can't see.
Right.
Windows are tinted. So bring them down. Yeah, let him have a look and then bring it back up again.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but you're protecting yourself all the time
Mhm.
from all of this.
Mm.
So, I hereby deny consent for my detention. It's not a voluntary detention. I do not consent to being here. I am under arrest. You've arrested me, and I don't consent. So I'm either under arrest or I'm free to go. So now you're saying in writing, I don't consent to my detention. I hereby request to be immediately released from custody, arrest and detention, and then free to continue my private travels and business as is my right. So we've said this right at the first few questions. Why am I under arrest? You're not under arrest. Oh, if I'm not under arrest, then I'm free to go. Bye, officer.
When you're not free to go, you're being detained.
Well.
You missed it, but an involuntary detention is an arrest.
From the moment the lights go on,
Correct.
you're under arrest.
Correct.
That's a felony because that's an emergency, and what's the emergency? We were looking for that, but
Yeah. You'll have to watch the video for
Yeah.
the sequence, but yeah, you missed that part. So we've gotten to the point where not only have I told him, we've now gotten to the point where I've had to give him the document because he still wants to proceed with this.
Mhm.
So now I've given him all of this to read, and he should be understanding this.
If he reads.
Yeah, they usually do. If he's going to take it back to the car with him, he's going to have to question because he's going to have to. If he's going to write a ticket, he's going to have to back that up. I'm calling him out I'm questioning his ability and his jurisdiction. So now he has to say, well, hang on a minute, do I really have jurisdiction? Does this guy know what the hell he's talking about? Is he a lawyer? Am I getting shafted here? Or am I getting pumped? So he's going to talk to his supervisor, probably, and hopefully they know the law and they come across this often enough that maybe he'll just say, oh, okay, just give the guy a warning and, you know, let him go. Or hang on a minute, I'm going to be 5-10 minutes, I'll be down there. That's sometimes what happens too. Supervisor shows up. So we're at page 4. I've given him all the information.
That's a lengthy document.
It is, yeah, but it doesn't take long really to get to this. So he's already been informed of pretty much everything that he needs. And again, all these summaries, they're all itemized.
Right.
So this one page alone spells it out for him. So if you do not release me immediately upon reading this notice, I will presume you to be under the impression that you have authority and jurisdiction for my arrest for a crime, infractions are not crimes, and consent must be obtained from the accused for any detention for an alleged infraction. I've already said in the previous paragraph, I do not consent, release me immediately.
Right.
So, if it should be shown at any time that you do not have full authority, cause and jurisdiction for my arrest, you will be subject to civil and criminal penalty and obligated to major remedy to me in cash. Or gold and silver, but they can't pay that. You agree to those terms by committing any unlawful or unauthorized force, command, detention or arrest against me.
I like that.
If you fail to release me upon presentation of this notice, you will be required at a time in the future to show cause for any non-consensual detention, arrest. Well, saying again, this is non-consensual, and you've arrested me. Your failure to show cause and jurisdiction upon demand will cause major debt and obligation of you to me for all damages, losses, harm, injuries, and violations of rights, in addition to possible civil and criminal actions, allegations, and reports against you personally. Under arrest and threat of violence by you and your armed law enforcement associates, because by that time there's probably several going to be down there, I will, under protest, be compliant and not resist any reasonable command you may issue unless I find it necessary to act in defence of my health and safety or the health and safety of others present, as is allowed by law. You have a right to self-defence, even against police officers who are attempting an illegal arrest. Now, you have to prove that it's an illegal arrest, and the chances are you're going to get the shit kicked out of you during the process of your resisting, because there's going to be more of them than you, but can you legally get away with it later? Possibly. Again, you've given them all a notice. You told them that illegal arrest I can resist, and under the law it's proven that you can. So, let's just go up a little bit.
I read an article not too long ago, sovereign citizen to look at as terrorists.
Yeah, again, it's what they do is they do as much as they possibly can to scare people.
Yeah, it scared the shit out of me. But
It does.
But then I turned my brain around and I was like, I see what they're doing now.
Yeah.
But I spoke to my brother-in-law who was a sergeant in the police department for 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, when you get pulled over, it's not going to be easy. Like, that's how they're going to treat you like that. It's not going to be an easy thing.
Well, first question is, are you a sovereign citizen? What's your answer?
I see what.
No, I'm a person, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
Well, my answer is, well, which one are you talking about? Am I a sovereign or am I a citizen? I can't be both.
Master slave.
Apart from the fact that you could say, well, I don't answer questions. And, you know, it's none of your business what I am. And if you want to identify me, profile me, I think it's against the law. Are you a trained profiler? there's lots of things you can say, but the main one is a sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. You can't be a sovereign and a citizen. It's one or the other. So you can answer that question. Fine, or answered by that. So this is a little bit that, again, they need to see. So I have no intention to interfere with any law enforcement activity or objective, and I have no intention to become belligerent or agitated, because those are words that they will use in their paperwork to describe how you became as the officers were investigating the offences and the crime. The defendant became agitated and belligerent. So you're saying, well, hang on a minute, I have no intention to become belligerent or agitated or to cause any difficulty or hindrance to your authorised and legally compliant law enforcement activity. If it's illegal, then, well, that's another matter. I will not be provoked unless you are provoking me with hostile threats and actions. I'm not in protest or opposition against your office, your profession, or any of your lawful actions. I'm in protest only of your violation of my rights, if there are any, and any of your misconduct, if there is any. Since I have and do rightfully deny consent for detention, again I'm pointing it out from above, by law you must now either release me or place me under arrest with cause, jurisdiction, and proper process. In law there is no such thing as forced detention. Detention is voluntary, arrest is forced. Spelled it out. And we've got citations lower down, if they get that far and want to read it, that show that courts have said all involuntary arrests, detentions, are arrests. So you're arrested, whether they've Mirandized you or not, you are under arrest. So I request that you at this time clearly state under the above invocations of rights one of the following as you are required by law. Am I free to go, or am I under arrest? Excuse me again. If you seek my lawful detention, you must now declare my arrest and show cause and jurisdiction. What I should probably add to that is, and you must Mirandize me. You must read me my rights. That could be added to that. So if I am under arrest, I refer you to the invocations of rights above. My cooperation and compliance may not in any way be interpreted as waiver of any of the rights at any time. My actions, while under threat of force and violence by law enforcement, are under duress, and to avoid the violent potential of your armed presence, I will comply with your reasonable directives and sustain limited personal disruption in the process to hold you accountable later. In any question of my compliance and cooperation, refer to the declarations and invocations above. I've already told them how I'm going to behave. I'm not a belligerent, and I'm not going to be agitated. Just be respectful of me and I will be respectful of you. In essence, that's what I'm saying there. So there we are at 5. Now 6 is the reference and citations, first page. Undoubtedly the right of locomotion, the right to remove from one place to another, according to inclination, is an attribute of personal liberty. And the right ordinarily of free transit from or through the territory of any state is a right secured by the 14th Amendment and by other provisions of the Constitution. And they go on. They mention obviously 14th Amendment, right to travel, Supreme Court citations. So they go on, and make an explanation. So that's 6 pages. That's pretty much tells them exactly what they need to know. If they want to go further, you know, they can do. There's more citations, more references, and then I think it goes. Then it goes into definitions. So then it explains what a highway is, what a public highway is, what a street is. Definitions, it's on highways. And if you notice as well, a lot of these, Pennsylvania, Texas, South Dakota, Utah, It doesn't matter where you are.
Right.
There's a reference, there's a
As a
definition.
reference, having, let's say, Texas paragraph 114.001 in definitions under public highway,
Yeah.
would this apply to New Jersey definition of public highway?
No, New Jersey has its own Title 39. It's the Road Traffic
Right.
Act.
So Title 39 in New Jersey,
One of the big issues,
referencing on this coming from all over,
the big issue with New Jersey and some other states, they're not always included in here. Okay, so there's the U.S. Supreme Court decisions, but when you go to the codes per state, they all get their authority from the federal legislation. So there is the federal Highway Traffic Act, and that legislation is the power that then feeds down to the states. The states make their own codes and regulations based off that legislation.
so, okay, so you can always go to the top.
They get their power from the federal legislation. They also should get all of their definitions, but they make up their own definitions. Now, in the case of a motor
You
vehicle,
know, somewhere motor vehicle includes car, and somewhere motor vehicle does not include car.
yeah,
Includes
okay, so I just wanted, I think it's quite far down.
what was the most popular? Automobile, right?
Yeah, so this is case
So-
law on
so-
the
so
term
New
automobile
Jersey, I
versus
don't
motor
have-
vehicle.
New Jersey Title 39, definition of motor vehicle, includes automobile.
Yeah, but then when you also look at it, a motor vehicle is for commercial purposes, and what Title 39 did on that description, they took it out. But they get their power from the federal legislation, which does correctly identify what a motor vehicle is. And it's for a vehicle used for commercial purposes. So they correctly define it, whereas Title 39 in New Jersey, they don't. But it doesn't matter. They've shortened the definition, and it's...
So it still has to go back to its original source.
You can still reference the original source for the originating power from the legislation, from the original legislation. So New Jersey doesn't have a right to redefine what a motor vehicle is. They do,
Right.
but that's only because they don't want to tell you the whole truth. So, I mean, again, we go through all of these. These are just all definitions. I just want to see if there's one, I think there's a specific page that mentions a motor vehicle description. This one, government, public servants, officers, judges are not immune from suit. They all seem to see, oh, I'm immune, sovereign immunity. You can't come after me. I'm doing this job, I'm protected. No, you're not. You're only protected if you're doing the job under the authority of the job.
Right.
If you act outside the job and outside the authority of the job, you're no longer protected. You're operating as a private individual, and actually a privateer, in effect, because you're demanding money, in many cases, with menaces and with a deadly weapon, which has its offences of their own. So this is just to explain what that is. Again, it's in the paperwork. I'm not going to read through it. So, ignorance of the law does not excuse misconduct in anyone, least of all in sworn officer of the law.
Hey, it was almost...
So all are presumed to know the law. So if you are an officer of the law or an officer of the court, you are presumed to know the law. Jurisdiction challenged to all at any and all times. But you can challenge jurisdiction whenever the hell you want.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, side of the road. I'm sat here and I'm challenging your jurisdiction, bud.
Right.
And here's all the stuff. And if we go further and they violate my rights and go further and then there's arrest and
But
then we're in court.
jurisdiction can be challenged at any.
Yeah, and that's what it's saying. Jurisdiction challenged to all at any and all times. Right from the very beginning, or even after the court case has been heard and adjudicated.
Right.
You can challenge it right then if you wanted to. What I'm saying is, I'm not defending myself after the fact. I'm defending myself right here on the side of the road. You don't have jurisdiction on me, pal.
Right.
So listen to what I'm saying. Let me continue, and let's all have a nice day. So I'm protecting myself, protecting him, which I've already said in here, because the chances are he's opening himself up to a whole heap of legal troubles. And he may find that out, or he may not know. We'll see. It's all down to how the interaction goes minute to minute. So government's established to protect and maintain individual rights. That's what the government's there for. That's what the cops are there for. That's what the civil authorities are there for. Municipal governments. They're all there to protect and maintain the individual rights of the people. That's what the Constitution is all about. All political power is inherent in the people. So, page 20. I think it is in there somewhere, but I must have flown by it. But there is a description of motor vehicle, and it's the description that comes from the original legislation, federal legislation.
Yeah, you have it highlighted, a little higher.
Yeah, I may have gone through, blasted through it, but...
It was up for a minute.
A little bit higher. Yep. 18 U.S.C.
Yeah, there it is, yeah, 18 U.S.C. 31, so that's it. That's the legislation, federal legislation. So motor vehicle means, every description or other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes. And, not or, and.
And, right.
So it has to be any mechanically propelled, and it has to be used for commercial purposes.
Right.
And again, it says on the highways, in the transportation of passengers or passengers and property.
So technically, if you're if you're traveling with a 53-foot trailer and a tractor, and you're moving your personal property.
Technically, yes. If that's not registered and it's not ever used as a in commercial purposes, they could intimate and infer that you have an articulated vehicle with a 40 or a 50 or a 53-foot trailer on the back. They could intimate that that's not for the transfer of personal property. You're doing business somewhere. You're transporting goods or
No, I got a lot of property.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get your point.
Yeah.
But technically, it's true. It is a mechanically propelled vehicle.
Right.
And if it's not being used for commercial purposes, then it doesn't come under the definition.
Right.
So if it doesn't come under the definition, the Act doesn't apply to you.
Right.
And it doesn't apply to that vehicle.
Yeah. I mean,
that
there's
car, that
right.
trailer, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So, clear distinctions. But that's what I say, that is the defining
But
definition.
That's very difficult because everything that's used, slightly used, went through the process. The dealer is taking care of your registration, and even if you choose to do it yourself, you're still not getting the original.
Yeah, the original title. I get that, but the thing is, this whole point is not. It's not about necessarily the title, the ownership, and all that. It's your use of.
Point is, my car is already described as passenger vehicle.
Yeah, under the certificate of title that you get, because you've registered it. So the description applies to what they
Class group.
and it's the class that you can use that vehicle under for commercial purposes. But if it's not being used for commercial purposes, and if the registration...
So then we have to rely on specific moment in time.
Yes, exactly. I was trying to explain that to Maria earlier on as well. The use at that moment in time that you're putting it to is important at that moment in time, because the driving license and the registration and the use you put it to is like an overcoat. If you're travelling, you're not using the driving license under its contractual terms. You might even be in a registered car. As I mentioned about the young kid, the 22-year-old, he was driving his mum's car. It was registered. He didn't have a driving license. He actually admitted he didn't have a driving license, which he shouldn't have done, but